Creative Katie here. Welcome to a mixed media tutorial. This one is a home decor project. We are going to make this gratitude bucket. We can put all the things that we're grateful for inside the bucket. And we're going to be using some DIY decoupage papers. So to start off, I bought these buckets at Michael's off season. They had snowmen, they had Halloween. I sanded them and I gave them 2 or 3 coats of Kills 2 latex paint to prime them. Now, those decoupage papers that I said we made, here's how I made them. I am using the white layers of napkins. Yes, you know those things that we typically throw away or store forever and never use? Well, I am applying acrylic paint through my stencils on them using different colors, and I'm looking at things that I have to choose the colors. So don't be afraid to use other people's art, stock photos, napkins, things in your world to get the colors that you may want. And I'm mixing these colors and stenciling through this stencil. Now, I admit, when I was making this decoupage paper, I did not know that I was going to be using it for this project. I knew I had that project. It had been sitting incomplete for months, and I wasn't sure how I was going to use my stencils to stencil on the bucket, which is a round, awkward surface. So I continue here, and I get 4 of them. And here is a link. You can click in the iCards or end card to go to the video where I'm going to teach you how to do this. So once these are dry, I'm just separating them, cutting it apart, and I am going to use a brush with water to remove a lot of the excess white, the napkin paper. I'm going as close as I can to it. I want to remove as much as I can, even though a lot of that does fade away, does become very translucent. I prefer, getting as close as I can. You play it by ear and get what works for you. So I'm just doing this to all 4 of prints of this. And I like the torn edge that shows a little less than if you had a straight cut edge. So there's my bucket, and I am using some white paint and some Naples yellow, and I'm applying with a makeup sponge. And I want this to look kind of rustic. I'm not going to get it perfectly smooth, so I'm adding, less white, more of the yellow. I want it to look mottled and not exactly perfectly even. And I'm using a color that isn't going to compete with my focal image, the sunflowers, but works together. And I found using the makeup sponge worked really well for this, although I did end up grabbing more the makeup sponge that are newer. It didn't fall apart. Some of the older ones that I reuse and reuse and reuse, when I started using it for this purpose, it was falling apart. And I'm getting in under the trim here. And that's just me being very, very particular. But if you're like me, then using the brush here worked really, really well. And I came back and I did give this another coat, and then I really let everything dry. The Kills 2 that I put on as well, it had dried for, well, basically it had sat for months, but I would let it really dry. I would give it, a couple days, a week or so before you start adding to it. So here are the lovely sunflower items that were stenciled on napkin, the white layers of the napkin. So I decided after playing around that I'm going to decoupage on 4 of these sunflowers, all 4 of them. And I am placing them and putting some Liquitex matte medium. This is fluid underneath and on top. And I'm using a soft brush to spread on top of. Remember, this is a napkin and it becomes very, very fragile. And there, I even actually lost a leaf. But don't worry, we're going to solve that problem. And with the napkin decoupaging, that is easier than you think. I found because the tin can is really hard, as opposed to doing it on an art journal page, I did rip the napkin several times. So caution. So here I go, a lot of matte medium, and then I'm putting the napkin. And I am layering the napkins over. I've kind of dry mounted it to figure out exactly how much I need to overlap them. And because again, the napkin goes almost translucent, you can do that and it looks absolutely lovely. I was so thrilled with how this all came together. Now, this is a tin can. It's galvanized steel tin can. If you're using the heat tool, be careful. The metal gets hot. Now, my heat tool isn't an embossing tool, but if you were using an embossing tool, it would even get hotter, and there's a likelihood of you burning yourself. So please take caution. And you can see how the white of the napkin really disappeared, especially with the background. And I apologize sometimes that it is not exactly in perfect view. This is an awkward thing to be creating, and to get it on camera is somewhat difficult sometimes when I'm trying to work on it as well. And I ripped the napkin there, but we're going to show you how I fix that too. So I grab another piece of scrap napkin and I'm re-stenciling those leaves on using the same colors or as close as I can on a piece of napkin. Anything where I'm going to basically go back in and I'm going to do a patch job. I pulled I ripped the center of the sunflower as well. So I am just stenciling again, and I'm going to cut out the part and put a little matte medium and put the missing piece back in. And there's the leaf. And no one's the wiser that I had ripped off the one leaf. Now, some of the white was bothering me. I wanted to see less of it, so I just thinned down the Naples yellow paint a little bit, and I just went in and wherever it was a little whiter than I liked, I just gave it a brush of paint, and that just knocked it back. Now I grabbed my Inktense blocks and I'm just adding some highlighting with it, adding some of this burgundy color on the can. I don't end up doing a whole lot of it. And I'm using the Inktense blocks because the Inktense are ink, not paint. And they are dry or they're permanent when they're dry. Now, I am going to be varnishing this, and I don't want anything that's there to reactivate. So I want to make sure that whatever I put down at this stage is permanent. So now I'm taking the brown paint, burnt umber, and I'm just putting it on the trim. And this is making it look like a rusted bucket. I really like the look, and it just ties in with the center of the sunflowers. Now I'm calling this a gratitude bucket, and my intention is to make cards that say I'm thankful for or I found joy in, and you can put in your daily things that you're grateful for daily and then read them out. Now I found a sentiment, choose joy, and I stamped with black acrylic paint, and you guessed it, back on those napkins. And I'm just decoupaging that down. The white becomes translucent, you can't see it. And I have the sentiment. So a great way of putting a sentiment on something that's round. Thank you so much for joining me. Give me a thumbs up, give me a comment. Stay tuned. This will not be the last bucket I do. I have about 6 more of them. Thanks again for watching.